Welcome to Story Planet, where every tale is a journey. The train is ready, and your seat awaits. Ticket in hand. What are you waiting for on the platform? Step aboard and enjoy the peaceful journey to somewhere far. Tickets to somewhere far. The soft crunch of gravel beneath her boots was the only sound as Lena made her way across the quiet platform of the station. It was early, the sky still a pale wash of blue, and the morning chill wrapped around her like a blanket. She tugged her coat tighter, her fingers lingering in her pockets, as she looked up at the board of train schedules. Where was she even going? She stood there for a moment, staring at the flickering destinations, her mind racing in a dozen directions at once. Every option on the board seemed like a possibility, yet none of them felt right. Lena hadn't planned on leaving. In fact, this whole trip had been an impulse, the culmination of weeks of feeling trapped, restless, like she was suffocating in a life that had become too small for her. With a deep breath, she stepped up to the ticket window. The older man behind the glass gave her a patient smile, his hand poised over the keys of the machine, ready to print her a ticket. "Where to?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lena hesitated. "Somewhere far," she finally said, her voice quiet but resolute. The man didn't ask for clarification, didn't probe further, as if he had heard that same request many times before. Instead, he nodded, typing something into his machine, before sliding a ticket through the slot. She looked down at it, a one-way trip to a small, distant town she'd never heard of. It was perfect. "Thank you," she murmured, taking the ticket and moving toward the platform. The train was already there, waiting. It wasn't crowded, just a few passengers here and there, scattered across the carriages. Lena climbed aboard, the familiar scent of worn upholstery and polished metal greeting her as she made her way to an empty window seat in the second carriage. The world outside was still bathed in the soft glow of early morning, the kind of light that made everything feel new and possible. She sank into her seat, letting the tension of the last few weeks melt away as the train began to move. The station slowly disappeared behind her, swallowed by the trees and rolling hills that stretched out before her. Lena rested her head against the window, watching as the landscape outside slipped by. A blur of green fields, scattered cottages, and quiet roads winding through the countryside. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of release. No emails, no phone calls, no obligations to answer to. Just the steady rhythm of the train beneath her and the promise of something new waiting ahead. As the train rolled on, the quiet hum of the wheels over the tracks was soothing, lulling Lena into a peaceful state of mind. She had no destination in mind, no clear plan, and somehow that felt like exactly what she needed. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the world slip away, her thoughts drifting like the scenery outside the window. Her peace was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps approaching. She opened her eyes just as a man paused beside her seat. His tousled brown hair and easy smile made him seem approachable, though he hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether to disturb her. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice quiet but warm. Lena shook her head, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. "No, go ahead." The man smiled, grateful, and slid into the seat, placing a backpack at his feet. He didn't speak right away, which Lena appreciated. Instead, he leaned back, looking out the window with the same thoughtful expression she'd worn just moments before. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the world pass by outside. The countryside was beginning to shift, rolling hills giving way to denser forests and deeper valleys, the light casting long shadows as the sun rose higher in the sky. Eventually, the man turned toward her, offering a small, polite smile. "I'm Caleb, by the way." "Lena," she replied, matching his smile with one of her own. She liked that he wasn't rushing into conversation. There was a kind of quiet understanding between them already, a shared need for stillness, for space to think. "Where are you headed?" Caleb asked, his tone casual, as though the answer didn't matter all that much. Lena hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I'm not really sure," she admitted. "Just somewhere far from here." Caleb nodded, his gaze drifting back to the window. "Yeah, I know what you mean." There was something in the way he said it that made Lena feel like he wasn't just talking about distance. She could sense that same restlessness in him, the same need to escape, to get away from something that had become too much. She wondered what his story was, what had brought him here, on this train, heading to some unknown place. But she didn't ask. She didn't want to pry, and maybe she didn't want to share her own reasons just yet either. Instead, they let the conversation drift, like the scenery passing outside, never too heavy, never too deep, just enough to feel like they weren't alone on this strange, aimless journey. The train rattled gently as they moved deeper into the countryside, the rhythm of the wheels creating a soothing melody. A few seats ahead, an older man, dressed in a well-worn jacket and a thick scarf, sat reading a newspaper. His face was weathered, his eyes kind, and every now and then he glanced out the window with a small, knowing smile. After a while, he folded his newspaper, stood, and made his way down the aisle toward Lena and Caleb. He paused beside them, his eyes twinkling with the warmth of someone who had seen more of life than most. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "I couldn't help overhearing you two. Sounds like you're both traveling with no clear destination in mind." Lena and Caleb exchanged a glance, neither of them sure how to respond. The man smiled, sensing their hesitation. I know that feeling, he continued. But if you're looking for a place to rest, somewhere peaceful where you can catch your breath for a while, I think I might have just the place. Lena furrowed her brow, intrigued. What do you mean? The man chuckled softly. I'm from a small village, a little ways off this train's route. It's quiet, beautiful, and peaceful, a place where time seems to slow down. I always say it's a village for those who need a break from the world. We've got cozy cottages, a river that runs through the hills, and food that'll warm your soul. If you're looking for a place to stay, you're welcome to come. No obligations, no pressures, just a chance to pause and enjoy the simple things. You can stay as long as you like. Caleb raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. And you'd invite strangers like us? The man's smile widened. Everyone is a stranger at first, aren't they? Besides, in our village, we believe in sharing what we have. The world could use more of that, don't you think? Lena felt something stir inside her, a warmth she hadn't expected. The idea of a quiet village nestled in the hills, a place where she could disappear for a while and let her soul rest, sounded almost too good to be true. She turned to Caleb, who seemed to be thinking the same thing. What do you think? Lena asked softly. Caleb smiled. It sounds like exactly what I need. The older man beamed, clapping his hands together. Wonderful. We'll be at the stop soon. I'll show you around when we get there. I promise. You won't regret it. The train soon pulled into a small, unmarked station, nestled between hills that seemed to cradle the village in a protective embrace. Lena and Caleb stepped off the train with the older man, their bags slung over their shoulders, the air fresh and crisp around them. As they walked down the path that led from the station, Lena's heart felt lighter with each step. The village appeared before them like something out of a dream. Quaint cottages with chimneys puffing gentle smoke, a clear river winding its way through the valley, and hills covered in wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. The colors of the landscape were soft and calming, the kind of place that felt like a long, deep breath. This, the older man said, spreading his arms wide, is our little piece of heaven. Lena and Caleb stood in awe, taking it all in. The village was quiet, but alive with a kind of warmth that radiated from its very essence. There was no rush, no hustle, just the soft hum of a place where time seemed to slow down and offer itself to anyone willing to pause. The man led them to a small cottage by the river, its stone walls covered in ivy, with a small garden blooming with flowers of every color. You can stay here, he said, gesturing toward the cottage. It's a cozy place, perfect for those looking to rest. And the view of the hills from the back porch, that's where the magic is. Lena felt her heart swell with gratitude. She had been running for so long, searching for something she couldn't quite name. But standing here, by the river, with the hills stretching out before her, she felt a sense of peace settle deep in her chest. Caleb smiled beside her, his eyes reflecting the same contentment she felt. "This feels right," he said softly. Lena nodded, her voice quiet, but filled with a warmth she hadn't known in a long time. "It does." Over the next week, Lena and Caleb found themselves settling into the rhythms of village life. They woke each morning to the sound of the river flowing past the cottage, the soft rustling of leaves in the wind, and the distant chatter of villagers beginning their day. They took long walks through the hills, explored the quiet corners of the village, and sat by the river at dusk, watching the sun dip below the horizon in a blaze of orange and pink. The village felt like a haven, a place where they could let go of the stress and weight of their previous lives. The locals were kind, always offering fresh bread, vegetables, and warm, home-cooked meals. In the evenings, the village square would light up with lanterns, and sometimes they would sit by the fire, listening to the older villagers tell stories about the history of the place. It was everything they needed, a chance to pause, to heal, and to remember what it felt like to simply be. But as the days passed, a quiet understanding began to settle between them. While the village felt like paradise, they both knew it wasn't a permanent escape. There were still things to face back home, responsibilities to take care of, and problems that needed to be resolved. But the village had given them the strength to return to those problems with new clarity and energy. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their cottage, the stars twinkling brightly overhead, Lena glanced over at Caleb. He was staring out at the hills, his expression peaceful but thoughtful. "We've been here for a while," Lena said softly. "Do you think it's time to go back?" Caleb nodded slowly, turning to meet her gaze. "Yeah, I think it is. But I don't want this to be the end. I feel like we've found something here, something worth holding on to." Lena smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. "Maybe we don't have to say goodbye to it. We can go back, deal with everything we need to, and then come back here for good." Caleb's eyes lit up with a mix of excitement and relief. "You'd want that?" Lena nodded. "This place, it feels like home in a way I haven't felt in a long time. I know we have things to take care of back in the city, but once we've sorted it all out, I want to come back, settle here, start over." Caleb grinned, a spark of hope flickering in his eyes. "I like the sound of that." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their decision settling in. It wasn't that they were running away from their problems. They were going back to face them head on. But now they had a place to return to, a place where they could start fresh, free from the pressures and noise of the world they had left behind. "We'll come back," Lena said softly, her heart filled with certainty. And when we do, we'll make this our home. Caleb reached over, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. I can't wait. The next morning, Lena and Caleb packed their bags, ready to return to the city. But as they stood on the porch of the cottage, looking out at the hills and the river, they knew that this wasn't goodbye. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would bring them back to this quiet village, where they could build the life they had always dreamed of. As the train pulled away from the station, Lena glanced out the window, watching the village grow smaller in the distance. She felt a sense of calm, knowing that they would return one day. And when they did, they would be ready to settle into the peaceful life they had found. For now, they were going back to face the world, but soon they would return to the place that had given them the break they needed. A small village by the river, nestled in the hills, where time moved slower and life was simpler. And that, Lena knew, was the home she had been searching for all along. Thank you for traveling with Story Planet. We hope you enjoyed your journey and stay in the charming village. If the wise voice of the older man resonated with you, consider liking and sharing the experience with your loved ones. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join us for more peaceful stories. We hope to see you on your next journey. Good night and sweet dreams.